All right, let's dive in. We're about to chew on one of the biggest, oldest questions in all of philosophy. But we're going to do it with a really practical twist that might just change the way you think about, well, everything. We are talking about William James and his game-changing idea of the cash value of truth.
So let's just start right there. What does it actually mean for something to be true? It seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? We use that word 100 times a day, but the second you really start to push on it, it gets complicated fast. For centuries, philosophers had a kind of standard answer. You see, before William James came along and shook things up, the big idea about truth was, well, it was intuitive. But as we're about to see, it had a massive flaw. The best way to picture it is to think of our minds as mirrors. This is called the Correspondence Theory, and it's pretty straightforward. A belief is true if it's a perfect one-to-one copy of reality. So if I believe there's a tree in the yard, that belief is true if and only if it perfectly mirrors the actual physical tree out there. Sounds clean, right? Simple. The problem is this beautiful idea has a giant, uncrossable chasm right in the middle of it. And here is the absolute kicker. How do you check? I mean, really, how would you ever know for sure? To confirm that your mental mirror is a perfect reflection, you'd have to somehow step outside of your own consciousness, outside of your own experience, and compare the reflection to the real thing. But you can't. We're always inside our own heads. And this was the philosophical brick wall that set the stage for a total revolution in thought. And this is where the American philosopher William James steps onto the scene. He looked at this impossible problem and basically said, you know what? Maybe we're asking the completely wrong question. Instead of asking if an idea is a perfect copy of reality, he suggested we ask something way more practical. This quote right here, it changes everything. James just completely flips the chessboard. He's not interested in abstract copies anymore. He wants to know about concrete consequences. He wants to know the cash value of a belief. In other words, what can you do with it? Where does it get you? For James, if believing something makes literally zero difference in how you live your life, then arguing about whether it's true is just a colossal waste of time. Now this is probably his most radical idea of all. He argues that truth isn't some static, dusty property that an idea just has. No. Truth is something that happens to an idea. It's a process. An idea starts out as just a possibility, a hypothesis, and it becomes true when we test it out in the world and it actually works. Truth isn't found, he says, it's made. So what does this verification process actually look like? Well, it's pretty simple. A true idea is one that successfully guides us through life. It works like a good map. It connects different parts of your experience, it helps you predict what's around the next corner, and ultimately, it gets you where you're trying to go. Now, as you can probably imagine, this idea was, and honestly still is, wildly misunderstood. Critics pounced on it immediately. They accused James of basically saying that truth is just whatever you want it to be, whatever feels good. But that could not be further from his actual point. This is the single most important distinction to make. James was not talking about what's convenient or what feels good in a single moment. He specifically said truth is what is expedient in the long run and on the whole. So a belief that feels great today but causes your life to totally fall apart tomorrow is, by his definition, a false idea. It failed the test. This isn't a license to believe whatever you want. It's a rigorous, lifelong process of testing your beliefs against reality. Let's try another analogy because this one really helps. Think of an idea not as a picture, but as a tool. Let's say a key. Now, a key isn't true because it's a perfect little portrait of the lock. A key is true, or maybe a better word is useful, because it opens the lock. Its value is in its function. And for James, that's exactly what our beliefs are. They're tools for navigating the world, and we call them true when they actually work.
So why does any of this philosophy from over a century ago still matter so much? Because once you start looking for it, you see James's pragmatic theory of truth absolutely everywhere. It has fundamentally shaped the modern world we live in.
Seriously, just think about the scientific method. It's pure pragmatism in action. A scientist doesn't just say a theory is true because it's beautiful. They say it's true because it works. It makes predictions that we can go out and test and verify. Or think about modern psychology. A therapist helps a patient change a core belief not because it's objectively false, but because it's dysfunctional. It's not working for them anymore. From our legal system to our own daily problem solving, we are all pragmatists, constantly judging ideas by their results.
And that leaves us with a fascinating and maybe a little bit of a challenging final thought. James gave us this incredibly powerful, dynamic, and human way to think about truth, but it also raises a really big question. If truth is like a map that we test against our journey, what do we do when different people with different experiences find that their maps, which work perfectly well for them, point in completely different directions? That's the enduring puzzle that pragmatism leaves us to solve.
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.